There are fears of more clashes between pro and anti-government supporters. Within the last few minutes, it's emerged that the opposition leader, Leonardo Lopez, has been, according to witnesses, taken into custody. He had dared authorities to arrest him when he turned up for today's rally in Caracas, a rally organized to protest against the government's policies, the government of Nicolas Maduro, that is. It's emerged that this evening, earlier today, as he, just after speaking to the crowds that had gathered to hear him, Mr. Lopez was arrested by police. We're going to have a look back at events in Caracas over the last few days. Oh, my apologies. I thought we were going to look back. Instead, we're going to talk about it now with my guest. And joining me here in the studio is Rolando Tomasini, who's a member of the opposition group in Caracas, the main group there organizing those protests.
In Paris.
In Paris tonight, but the main part of the group that is organizing tonight in Caracas, those protests today in Caracas, those demonstrations. We're also joined down the line from New York by Gregory Wilpert, who's the founder and editor of the Venezuela analysis. Thank you so much as well for being with us tonight. We hear, first of all, Rolando Tomasini, that Leonardo Lopez has been taken into custody. This was precisely what he dared the authorities to do.
It's not so much that he dared the authorities to do, it's actually that he told the authorities that he would be there to propose concrete demands about what we expect from the government, namely that they stop repressing the oppression, that they stop attacking the students, that they stop the violence against all the people, that they disarm the population that they have armed by creating these urban guerrillas that are actually instilling the fear and doing the dirty work for them, but also that they become responsible for these acts of violence that they are instilling, that we have seen in the social media, including torture, killings and invasions of private property over the last few days. Available on YouTube and tweet.
But not crucially so much in the mainstream media.
Not crucially there because there actually have been blockages of the media. The government has actually even kicked out some of the media out and interrupted even Twitter for a while. We could not even go through images or videos. We're not being able to upload it.
Gregory Wilpert, what do you make of the protests that we've seen over the course of the last few days? There's a great deal of anger among students, particularly, about the fact that there's been very little reporting of what's been going on mainstream media in Venezuela.
Well, first of all, I think there's a lot of misinformation also as to what's going on. I mean, we have proof that many images have been going through on the social media networks of pictures that supposedly show the demonstrations but in Venezuela, but actually they're pictures from other demonstrations in other countries, things like that. So there's a lot of disinformation. Not only that, I mean, the opposition, like your guest has said, is claiming that the government bears most of the responsibility for the violence, but we know also for a fact that these demonstrations have been quite violent in terms of damaging public property, attacking people. Actually, one of my journalists who works with me in Venezuela analysis was also attacked by one of the opposition demonstrators. I mean, these kinds of things are going on with accusations flying quite widely. So we have to be careful and look exactly at what's happening. But it's basically an attempt to, of course, to make the government look bad by claiming that there's all this repression going on, when I think that's a really pretty bad misrepresentation of what's actually happening.
Rolando Tomasini, if we look at what's behind the protests, what is it that the students and those taking to the streets of Caracas are calling for?
First of all, we see a government attacking its people. So I'm actually disagree with the other guest, because which I didn't hear the first part due to technical problems. But what we see is actually a government armed forces. We see the National Guards, we see the National Police, we see paramilitary groups that are self-declared and armed by the government, the Tupumaros, these are issuing Kalashnikov arms that, by the way, can only be bought and procured by the government, given to them, attacking the people. The dimension of this is actually visible and tangible on the social media. So it's quite clear. What are they demanding? They're demanding a stop to the violence against them. They're demanding that we stop criminalizing protest and freedom of speech. Well, we're in a situation where the freedom of speech and protest has become a criminal act, which is the proof is that today Leopoldo Lopez has been taking on guard for that. They're also asking to stop the penuries and the scarcity of basic goods that are being given to the people. People queue for hours and hours to get basic goods that are actually that are completely obsolete, like toilet paper, sugar, eggs, flour, in a country that is extremely rich.
That is at the heart of that protest, Gregory Wilpert, is the fact that things have gone bad to worse for the Venezuelan economy ever since Nicolas Maduro took over.
Well, I mean, we have to consider that last December 8, the Chavista forces won the mayoral and local elections with a substantial majority. So we can't say that everybody is against or is unhappy with what the government has been doing. It's true that there have been shortages and inflation has been very bad last year. But people are still supporting with a majority the government. And that's why I think these demonstrations are very problematic. Of course, people have a right to demonstrate against shortages and inflation, but that's not what at least the officially proclaimed reason is for the demonstrations. They're saying that they want the government to resign and are basically calling for the government to leave office, even though it had just won elections last April, the presidential election. So, I mean, I think there's, again, there's a lot of misinformation flying around. I mean, also the thing about the paramilitary forces is a complete exaggeration as to their role. It's true that there are some that exist, but they're really very small, very few of them. And the Maduro government has completely disavowed itself of them, just as the Chavez government did before. So, I mean, again, it's a complete exaggeration to say that this is what's causing the violence. What's causing the violence are the violent demonstrations of the demonstrators who are attacking public buildings, burning police cars, and fighting with the police.
The violence already exists. The violence has been 25,000 people died last year of street violence. That does not include the people who did not die on site, or that the unofficial deaths, or the people who were only injured. That's street crime. On top of that, what we have today is violence that is instilled by the government, by these groups. You have to understand what's happening here is quite classic for social transformation. Student groups like this, student protests, have been historically a catalyst and an accelerator of social change. What they're doing is demoralizing and trying to exhaust them by attacking them, by raping them, by beating them up. This is all available online. You can see them. These are not video created. Government support has actually declined, and whatever is left today is dubious. At this very moment, we have support from PDVSA employees going in a march against the opposition. But what you see there is also that these are all people who have been forced to march for the most part and have actually been given means and resources, including buses, to be able to travel to the capital city in order to be present there. So to what extent the actual government has the support is very unclear. It's very unclear. And at the same time, we see that they won their elections, but we also noticed when they won the elections that the popular support was much less in the popular areas. There was less party, there was less lights, there was, on the contrary, a lot more terror.
I want to put also to you, Gregory Wilpert, this accusation on the part of Nicolas Maduro. He's sending home 3 U.S. embassy officials for what he alleges is their support of opposition plots. Is this not another indication of a man whose hold on power gets flimsier by the day?
No, not at all. I think one has to see these, the expulsion in the context of the larger context of Latin American history, of U.S. intervention in Latin America. And so that makes the Venezuelan government inherently suspicious of anything that the U.S. government does. And they have plenty of evidence, both from the WikiLeaks revelations that the U.S. government has been meeting with and has been financing opposition sectors. And they say that they have more recent emails as well that they've intercepted that give proof to the involvement of these 3 diplomats who were expelled. I mean, the other thing is you have to keep also in mind is that Secretary of State John Kerry recently has made statements that essentially go towards supporting the opposition, statements that he never made, for example, with regard to the protests that happened in Brazil last year, that were actually much larger than the recent protests in Venezuela. And so, I mean, it's clearly that the U.S. government is favoring one side in this conflict.
My understanding is that the message that was sent was supported by the Organization of American States, by the High Commissioner of the UN, and also by the High Commissioner of the EU, not necessarily supporting the government, but actually calling for a democratic dialogue. And this dialogue is extremely difficult in a country that has been polarized by violence, has been polarized by a revolutionary discourse that is extremely hate, that is extremely polarizing the camps of those who can, who cannot, on behalf of the government.
And where we're going to have to leave it now. Thank you very much indeed to both of you, Rolando Tomasini and Gregory Wilpert, for having been with us tonight, even as those demonstrations get underway in Venezuela today. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we're going to get all the very latest news from business, including that deal between French car maker Peugeot Citroën and Chinese investors, plus all the latest in sports with all the very latest results from Sochi.